In the heart of North Africa, along the banks of the Nile, lived a woman whose courage helped reshape an entire nation. A woman who challenged colonialism, confronted patriarchy, and sparked a movement that still echoes across the African continent. Her name was Huda Sha'arawi. Today, we travel back to early 1900s Egypt, a land under British occupation, a society wrapped in traditions, and a young girl who dared to imagine freedom. This is the story of one of Africa's greatest heroines. Huda Sha'arawi was born in 1879 into a wealthy aristocratic family, but her life was anything but easy. Behind the grand walls of her family home, she witnessed the quiet suffering of women, confined, silenced, and separated from the world. She was educated at home, learning Arabic, French poetry, and philosophy, yet whenever she tried to speak her mind outside the classroom, society told her, "Sit down, be silent, know your place." But Huda was no ordinary girl. Every restriction only sharpened her desire for change. At the age of 13, Huda was pushed into marriage with her much older cousin, a common tradition at the time, one that symbolized how society treated young girls as property, not people. But Huda refused to be a prisoner in her own home. She separated from her husband, choosing independence over tradition, and used those years of separation to educate herself even more. She read books, debated ideas, and studied women's movements around the world. When society expected silence, Huda forged her own voice. By the early 1900s, Egypt was groaning under British colonial rule. Taxes were high. Freedoms were crushed. And the British believed Egyptians couldn't rule themselves. Egyptians from all walks of life began resisting, and Huda stepped into the political arena with fierce determinations. She joined the Egyptian nationalist movement, standing side by side with men and women who demanded independence. But she didn't stop there. She founded women's charitable organizations, schools for girls, and literacy programs, believing that no nation could truly be free unless its women were educated and empowered. For Huda, the fight against colonialism and the fight for women's rights were the same struggle. The year is 1919. Egypt erupts in massive protest after the British exiled nationalist leader Saad Zaghloul. And then something incredible happens. Huda Sha'arawi steps into the streets, leading the first ever women's protest in Egyptian history. Picture this: elite women, ordinary mothers, young girls, marching through Cairo under a scorching sun, holding banners chanting, "Long live Egypt!" The British soldiers panicked. Shots were fired over the heads of the women to scare them. But Huda did not flinch. She became the symbol of courage, the woman who confronted an empire without lifting a weapon. After years of struggle, the British finally eased their grip. Egypt gained partial independence in 1922. Huda traveled to Europe as part of a women's delegation, and then came the moment that would go down in African history. As she stepped off the train in Cairo, surrounded by supporters and journalists, Huda removed her face veil. A gasp swept through the crowd. It was bold. It was shocking. It was revolutionary. She wasn't rejecting culture. She was rejecting the idea that women should be unseen. Her act sparked debates, inspired movements, and encouraged Egyptian women to demand visibility, respect, and rights. In 1923, Huda founded the Egyptian Feminist Union, the first in the country she fought for. Girls' education, women's access to work, raising the age of marriage, ending polygamy, women's participation in politics. And she didn't stop in Egypt. She became president of the Arab Feminist Union, connecting women's struggles across Africa and the Middle East. Her message was simple. A nation cannot rise while half of its people are held down. Huda Sha'arawi died in 1947, but her voice never faded. She lit a torch that future generations carried forward. Thanks to her influence, Egypt eventually granted women the right to vote, access to education, participation in public life. Her courage laid the foundation for African feminist movements, from Cairo to Nairobi, from Tunis to Cape Town. To this day, she is remembered as the mother of Arab and African feminism. Huda Sha'arawi proved that a single act of bravery can shake an empire, that an educated girl can become a national leader, and that African women have always been at the front lines of resistance. If you enjoyed this journey into African history, hit like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs to know that heroes come in all forms. Until next time, this is the African Heroes series. Stay inspired.